Tobias Wren, don't move.
Not moving, I promise. Just tell me how I can
The
help.
concealed compartment's inside your crew bag.
I can explain. I travel constantly. Things get repaired and resewn all the time. You'll see.
Once is a mistake. Twice is suspicious. Tobias Wren did this 14 times across 2 years, and his luggage kept a record of every single trip.
The package is recovered from the lining and the body wrap.
No, I want to help you understand it. I'm not hiding anything. I'll show you exactly how it all got there.
The crew lane is a privilege. It is not a right. And for Tobias Wren, it would end here, on this concourse, on this Tuesday afternoon, with 2 CBP officers asking him to step into a side room and open the rolling suitcase he had walked through this same terminal 96 times before. 8 kilograms, $1.9 million in retail cocaine, 14 confirmed trips across 22 months. By sunset, he would be in federal custody, and the rolling suitcase that had carried him through 6 years of an aviation career would be Exhibit A in a federal narcotics indictment that names handlers on 2 continents. Before we go any further, I want you to do something. The next time you fly, take a look at the crew walking past the line you've been standing in for 40 minutes. Notice how fast they move through. There's a reason that lane exists, and there's a reason this case is one of the worst nightmares federal aviation security has. Drop a comment and tell me whether you think crew should be searched on every rotation. Subscribe. We cover the cases the carriers never want you to hear about. Tobias Adam Wren was born in May of 1989 at Akron City Hospital in Akron, Ohio. His father, Walter Wren, spent 31 years as an electrical technician at the Goodyear plant on East Market Street. His mother, Joanne, taught 4th grade at Highland Elementary for the same span of years and was named District Teacher of the Year in 1998. The family lived in a 2-story frame house on Bisson Avenue in the Firestone Park neighborhood. A younger sister, Megan, came along in 1992. By every account from the people who would later be interviewed by federal probation, the Wrens were ordinary, church-going, paycheck-to-paycheck Midwesterners whose biggest disagreement was about whether to vacation at Lake Erie or in Pigeon Forge. Tobias was obsessed with airplanes from the time he could speak the word. The family album contains a photograph of him at 3 years old, standing inside the chain-link fence at the Akron-Canton Airport, pointing at a Northwest Airlines DC-9 about to take off. Walter took him out there on Sunday afternoons. Through grade school, his bedroom ceiling was covered in plastic airplane models hung from fishing line. He could name every commercial aircraft variant in service by age 9. He told his 4th grade class, in a yearbook entry his mother kept in a drawer for 30 years, that he was going to fly for a living. High school was Buchtel Community Learning Center in Southwest Akron. He was a B- student, more interested in the drama club than the classroom, and worked a part-time job through 3 years at a Steak and Shake on South Main Street. His evaluations from the manager there are still in his personnel file at the corporate office. They describe him as punctual, polite, and unusually good at calming down angry customers. He graduated in 2008 into the teeth of the financial crisis. There was no money for a 4-year university. Walter had already taken an early retirement package from Goodyear, and Joanne's salary covered the mortgage and not much else. Tobias enrolled at Stark State College in North Canton and finished an associate's in hospitality management in 2.5 years while working overnight at a Comfort Inn off Interstate 77. In 2012, he moved to Cleveland and took a front desk position at the Hilton Garden Inn near Hopkins International Airport. He worked overnight audits, learned to defuse drunk guests at 3 in the morning, and watched the flight crews come and go from the airport across the highway with what he later told a hiring manager was open envy. He applied to airlines in waves through 2014, 2015, and 2016. The rejections piled up in a manila folder he kept under his bed. Solstice Air, a mid-tier domestic carrier with a growing Caribbean and Central American leisure network, called him in for a final round interview in March of 2017. He was placed on the reserve list for 14 months before he flew his first revenue trip. Solstice's Flight Attendant Academy ran 6 weeks at a converted hotel campus outside Atlanta. Emergency evacuation drills in a mock cabin trainer. Door operation under pressure. Decompression scenarios. onboard medical emergencies, from cardiac events to in-flight births. Galley service standards. He scored in the top quartile of his class and pinned his wings in front of his mother and Megan in May of 2018. His starting hourly rate was $26.15, paid only when the aircraft door was closed, with a per diem of $2.20 per hour on the ground. By his second year, he was on the international qualification track. By his fourth year, his bid line included regular Central American rotations out of the Miami hub. His evaluations from those years read like the file of a model employee. Polished, attentive, exceeds service standards. Calm under pressure during a medical diversion to Nassau. Crew member of the month, August 2020. Passengers wrote in to compliment him by name on at least 11 occasions. He was promoted to lead flight attendant on narrow-body international rotations in early 2021. The promotion came with a small bid seniority boost and a slightly larger per diem. It also placed him, for the first time, in routine overnight layovers at a particular Central American station that the federal investigation would later describe as a documented sourcing point. To understand what Tobias Wren did, you have to understand what crew access is and why it exists. A commercial airline crew member at a major United States airport does not stand in the passenger TSA line. They use a separate corridor known as the crew lane, governed in most major hubs by the Known Crew Member Program, a joint TSA and Airline Pilots Association protocol that allows verified, badged, scheduled crew to bypass standard passenger screening and proceed to the secure side of the terminal through an abbreviated checkpoint. The badge is scanned. The crew member's identity is verified against an active duty roster. A jump seat rated agent confirms the trip pairing. The crew member proceeds. Crew bags are not unscreened. Crew are still subject to random inspection, to behavioral detection officer review, and to canine sweeps. But the practical reality at a major hub on a busy morning is that a crew member with a clean badge and a valid pairing moves through that corridor in under 90 seconds. A passenger in the same terminal at the same time will wait between 12 and 40 minutes. The crew lane exists because the alternative is operationally impossible. The United States commercial aviation system moves roughly 2.5 million passengers a day. A typical narrow-body rotation involves 4 to 6 crew members. A typical wide-body rotation, 8 to 14. Multiply that across 30,000 daily commercial movements, and you arrive at a crew screening population in the high hundreds of thousands. Subjecting all of them to full passenger-grade screening on every rotation would collapse the timetable inside a week. The system, in other words, runs on trust. Crew are trusted because crew have been background checked, badged, fingerprinted, and integrated into the operational chain. That trust is structural. Every federal prosecutor who has ever charged a crew courier case has cited the same paragraph in the same internal memorandum. Airline crew couriers operate inside an institutional trust structure that resists treating them as suspect. On the back end, at international arrivals, the same dynamic holds. Crew clear United States Customs and Border Protection through a dedicated channel that the agency does not publicly characterize, but that any frequent flyer has seen in operation. A duty crew with a closed pairing, a valid passport, and a clean record will pass through that channel in well under 5 minutes. Their declared belongings are reviewed against a customs form. Their bags are not, as a default rule, opened. That was the corridor Tobias Wren walked through 96 times across 2 years. The first contact came in a hotel bar. In the summer of 2021, on a layover at a beachfront hotel that the carrier used as its contracted crew accommodation in Central America, Tobias Wren met a man who introduced himself only as Mateo. The introduction was casual. Mateo bought him a drink. They talked about flights, about Miami, about the price of an apartment in Brickell, about how exhausting reserve life had been. Mateo said he worked in shipping logistics. He said his employer sometimes had small, time-sensitive packages that needed to reach Miami without sitting in cargo for 3 days. He asked, in a tone that was almost conversational, whether Tobias might be open to a side arrangement. He named a number, $9,000 for a single trip. Tobias did not say yes that night. He went back to his room, lay on the bed, and listed every reason he should not. He had a clean record. He had a career he had wanted since he was 3 years old. He had a sister who looked up to him and a mother who told her co-workers about every promotion. He had a Solstice Air pin on his blazer and 4 years of perfect evaluations behind him. He had no debt that would not resolve itself in time. And then he opened his banking app and looked at the number, which was, after rent and student loans, in the low 3 figures. He thought about the down payment on a 1-bedroom in a building he had walked past every morning. He closed the app. He called Mateo the next afternoon. The first trip was small, a single taped package, taped flat against the lower back beneath a tucked uniform shirt, 300 grams. He walked it through CBP at Miami International in just under 4 minutes. He met a man known only as the courier in the staff parking lot at the contracted crew hotel and handed off the package in a folded Solstice Air shopping bag. $9,000 in United States currency, banded in 5,000 and 4,000 stacks, were placed in his hand inside a brown grocery bag 2 days later at a different hotel. The arrangement escalated according to a pattern federal investigators would later describe as classic. Cargo volume grew. Per-trip pay grew with it. 12,000 became 14,000. 14 became 18. By trip 4, the body taping had been refined by someone in the network who knew how to distribute weight so that a uniform jacket would not show the outline. By trip 6, the standard issue Solstice Air Crew rolling case Tobias had been issued at hire was replaced with what he was told was a manufacturer warranty replacement of the same model, identical down to the embossed logo on the handle. It was not a warranty replacement. The replacement bag had been opened by a hand other than the manufacturer's. The interior lining had been cut, removed, and resewn around custom compartments shaped to the precise dimensions of the packages Tobias was being asked to carry. The stitching matched the original at a glance, and only at a glance. The compartments were accessed by way of a panel that released through a pressure point disguised as a structural seam. The bag was a piece of trafficking equipment manufactured for a particular courier, which is to say it was manufactured for him. Trip 7 moved 1.5 kilograms. Trip 9 moved 2 kilograms. Trip 11 moved 3. By trip 13, Tobias Wren was walking 8 kilos of cocaine through the crew lane at Miami International, while a man in a Solstice Air pin smiled at the CBP officer who waved him through. Per-trip pay across the 14 rotations totaled approximately $184,000 in cash, deposited in increments small enough to never cross the federal structuring threshold at 5 separate banks in 3 counties. Tobias Wren did not get caught because of a checkpoint dog, or a nervous agent, or a piece of bad luck on a Tuesday afternoon. He got caught because 2,200 miles south of Miami International, a separate trafficking case was already coming apart. In late 2022, federal agents working a multi-agency operation out of the Drug Enforcement Administration's office in a Central American capital developed a cooperating source from inside the sourcing organization. The source was a mid-tier logistics coordinator who had grown tired of the work, tired of his supervisor, and tired of waiting for a transfer that was never going to happen. He agreed to talk in exchange for relocation. He talked for 11 weeks. What he told them, among many other things, was that the organization had abandoned cargo shipment as its primary domestic entry method roughly 18 months earlier, and had moved to a courier model relying almost exclusively on commercial airline crew. He did not know the couriers' names, but he knew the routes, he knew the carrier, he knew which Central American station served as the staging hub, and he knew which United States arrival airport the shipments were terminating at. The DEA, working in coordination with Homeland Security Investigations and with a federal liaison at the carrier's corporate security office, ran a surface analysis. They took the source's routes, his carrier, his staging hub, and his arrival airport, and they intersected those 4 variables against the published rotation patterns of every Solstice air flight attendant who held the international qualification. The intersection produced a list of 23 names. Wren was on it. They narrowed further. They looked at frequency of the specific rotation across the previous 24 months. They looked at unexplained absences from preferred bid lines. They looked, with the carrier's full cooperation, at corporate-issued device location data on layovers. They cross-referenced reports of crew-side complaints, suspicious behavior, and any prior CBP secondary inspections. The list of 23 became a list of 4. The list of 4 became a list of 1. Surveillance on Tobias Wren began on a Wednesday in February of 2023. By the second week, federal agents had photographs of him meeting a known courier in the staff parking lot of the contracted crew hotel. By the third week, they had documented 2 separate cash handoffs at an apartment building in the Edgewater neighborhood of Miami. By the fourth week, they had a federal magistrate's signature on a complaint that would, on the next return rotation from the Central American station, become a controlled flag at the crew lane. That return rotation was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon in late March. The secondary inspection at Miami International on that Tuesday afternoon was not a discovery. It was a confirmation. CBP officer Daniel Aguirre had been briefed 3 days earlier. He knew which rotation Tobias Wren would be returning on. He knew which jet bridge the aircraft would dock at. He knew the badge number. He knew which face to look for among the cabin crew exiting the aircraft. The flag was triggered when Wren's badge scanned at the crew lane reader at 14:17 local time. The reader returned a routine alert that an experienced crew member would recognize as a random secondary. Wren smiled politely and rolled his case toward the side room without visible hesitation. In the side room, Officer Aguirre asked Wren to place his crew bag on the inspection table, open it, and step back. Wren did. The top compartment contained a uniform jacket, a folded apron, 3 paperback novels, 2 charging cables, a roll of breath mints, and a paper folder with his flight pairings printed and stamped. Officer Aguirre worked through those items methodically and set them aside. Then he tipped the bag onto its long side and ran a gloved hand along the interior lining. The seam released on the third attempt. Officer Aguirre later described the pressure point in his sworn statement as an engineered feature, not a defect. What was inside the compartment was 32 taped rectangles of compressed white powder, each between 200 and 250 grams, individually wrapped in beige packing tape and grease paper, fitted into a custom foamed cavity that was the exact shape of the package layout. A second compartment in the structural shell of the wheel housing contained the body taping kit, pre-cut adhesive strips, gauze underwrap, a roll of cohesive bandage. 2 pre-shaped fabric panels designed to redistribute the visual line of the carrier's uniform jacket. A field test of the powder returned cocaine. The total recovered weight was 8.1 kilograms. The federal lab analysis returned a purity reading consistent with the wholesale distribution tier and a cutting agent profile that matched a known signature of the sourcing organization the DEA had been working for 18 months. Wren's phone was seized at the scene and broken into within 72 hours by federal forensics. Inside the encrypted messaging application, agents recovered a thread spanning 14 separate trip windows. The thread used short, deliberately mundane language. Wheels up, curb in 12, same lobby, same as last. A single message from a contact saved only as M read, on a date corresponding to the 7th trip. Cleaner pack this run, less margin. Be careful at the corner sink. Agents would later identify the corner sink as the secondary inspection station Wren had walked past for 2 years. Financial records subpoenaed from 5 banks across Miami, Dade and Broward counties returned a cumulative deposit pattern of $178,400 in United States currency across the 22-month period, in increments ranging from $2,200 to $8,900. Each below the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. two safe deposit boxes, registered in Wren's name at a credit union in Aventura, contained an additional $51,000, and a folder of handwritten notations the government's filing characterizes as a personal trip ledger. The cooperating source in the Central American capital identified Wren from a photographic array on the morning of the third day. He used the courier code name he had heard the handlers reference. He had never met Wren in person. He did not need to. The route, the dates, the cargo, and the carrier were all he had to match. The side room at Miami International is windowless. It contains a metal table, two plastic chairs, a stainless steel inspection counter along the wall, and a wall-mounted camera that records continuously. Tobias Wren sat in one of the chairs with his hands flat on the table and his Solstice airpin still on his blazer. Officer Aguirre stood. A second CBP officer and a Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent named Yolanda Briggs entered the room 6 minutes after the scene was released. Special Agent Briggs sat down across from him. She placed a federal arrest warrant on the table, turned it to face him, and waited. Briggs: "Mr. Wren, you understand what's in your bag." Wren: "I understand what you found in my bag." Briggs: "That's not what I asked you." Wren: "I'd like to speak with an attorney." Special Agent Briggs nodded slowly. She did not raise her voice. She read him his rights from a printed card she had carried in her jacket pocket for 9 years. She asked him whether he understood each enumerated right. He said yes to each. She asked him whether, with those rights in mind, he wished to make any statement. He repeated his request for counsel. She closed the folder and stood. Briggs: "Mr. Wren, you are under arrest for importation of a controlled substance under Title 21, United States Code, Section 952, and on additional federal counts that will be presented at your initial appearance. Officer Aguirre will read you the formal arrest narrative. You will be transported from this facility to the Federal Detention Center on Northwest 12th Street. Your phone, your bag, your uniform items, and your personal effects are being seized as evidence pursuant to a federal warrant signed yesterday afternoon." Wren closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he asked one question. "Wren, can someone call my mother?" Special Agent Briggs said that would be addressed at processing. She placed handcuffs around his wrists, walked him out a side door of the side room, and into a waiting vehicle on the secure side of the terminal. He did not look at the CBP officer who had scanned his badge 11 minutes earlier. "We're heading into federal court now. Before we do, if you want to see how the system actually handles a case like this, not the movie version, the real version with detention orders and guideline ranges, and the things prosecutors actually say at a hearing, subscribe. We break down every detail, every week, on the cases that mainstream coverage walks past." Tobias Wren's initial appearance was held the following morning in Federal Magistrate Court in the Southern District of Florida. The complaint charged him with 4 federal offenses: importation of a controlled substance under Title 21, United States Code, Section 952, possession with intent to distribute under Section 841, conspiracy to import under Section 963, conspiracy to distribute under Section 846. A sentencing enhancement under the section addressing the use of a position in air transportation to facilitate trafficking was noted on the face of the charging document. The Assistant United States Attorney assigned to the case, Pamela Krieger, walked through the government's evidence at the detention hearing 2 days later in a presentation that lasted 36 minutes. She introduced photographs of the modified crew bag. She introduced the field test results. She introduced excerpts from the encrypted messaging thread. She introduced the financial summary covering the 5 banks and the 2 safe deposit boxes. She introduced a sworn declaration from the cooperating source. She introduced the surface analysis intersecting Wren's rotation pattern against the trafficking corridor. She argued that Wren was a flight risk on 3 independent grounds. He possessed an active passport. He held current employment-related access to international travel. He had documented operational relationships with foreign nationals already under federal indictment, She argued that he was a danger to the community on the strength of the volume of cocaine recovered and the duration of the trafficking conduct. The Honorable Bernadette Hollis, presiding, ordered him detained without bail pending trial. Her written order, 3 pages, contains the following passage that has since been quoted in 2 appellate filings in unrelated cases. The defendant did not merely participate in a controlled substance offense. He converted a structural trust extended to him by the United States aviation system and by the traveling public who depend on the integrity of that system into a private commercial enterprise. The court declines to assess his risk to the community as separable from the harm already done to the institutional framework he chose to exploit. His defense counsel, David Steinmetz of Steinmetz and Park, has filed early motions challenging the surface analysis methodology and the chain of custody on the phone seizure. As of this recording, no plea has been entered. The case is on the active trial docket and is expected to come before a federal jury within the next docket term. The sentencing exposure under the federal narcotics guidelines, given the recovered weight and the role enhancement, projects between 14 and 19 years in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Solstice Air terminated Tobias Wren's employment the same day as the arrest. His flight attendant certification was suspended by the FAA 72 hours later. The known crew member program issued a quiet update to its national operating protocol within the month. The contracted crew hotel in the Central American capital is no longer on Solstice Air's accommodation roster. Walter and Joanne Wren drove the 1,800 miles from Akron to Miami on the second weekend after the arrest. They were granted a 30-minute visit through plexiglass at the federal detention facility. Joanne Wren told a local reporter who reached her on her landline the following Tuesday only one sentence, which the reporter included in full. "I do not understand what happened to my son." The man who had stood inside a chain-link fence at the Akron-Canton airport at 3 years old, pointing at a Northwest Airlines DC-9, is now in federal custody on the 18th floor of a building on Northwest 12th Street, awaiting a trial that will likely end with him being transferred to a medium-security federal facility somewhere in the South. The rolling suitcase that carried him through that career sits in a sealed evidence locker. The brass wings his mother pinned to his lapel in May of 2018 sit in a manila envelope at the Federal Detention Center, marked as personal effects, scheduled for release to next of kin. This case was already disturbing, but the case on the right-hand side will leave you completely speechless. Click it now.